Well, good afternoon, guys, and I am currently in Surface Paradise. But you guys know anything about it, you might be surprised to learn there was once a rainforest here. And if you aren't surprised at that, you might be actually surprised to learn that there's some of that still is left. This little strip of land between Beach Walk and the side of the road is rainforest that was never cleared out, although it certainly isn't very grand or tall. It represents one of the last bits of rainforest in the entire lowland here that was never cleared out. A type of littoral rainforest, which is quite important and extremely rare in Australia these days. Let's talk about what we can find here. The main species seems to be this one here, which is Hibiscus tiliaceus, also known as tree hibiscus. That one's a bit interesting because it's found quite broadly throughout pretty much every tropical shoreline in the world. So it's in the Americas and Africa, Asia, and of course Australia. Of course, it is a member of the family Malvaceae as a hibiscus, which is nice hibiscus flowers, which I can't find on these specimens right now, but I will find a tree with some active flowers later. I also have this plant here, which is pretty common. This is Casuarina equisetifolia. A species I do believe is entirely endemic to the east coast of Australia, although it might be found on some other islands. The family Casuarinaceae, with its leaves or branches that have been entirely reduced to look like pine needles, which confused a lot of people, in fact, is very typical of the continent of Australia and its flora, though many species in Casuarina can be found elsewhere as well. And those are the main ones here, but there's some others that we can find if we keep looking. This one, I'm actually not sure. I believe there's two things it could be. Either Alectryon, coriaceus, or Cupaniopsis anacardioides. The first one would be I can't remember the common name for that one. The second one is commonly known as Tuckeroo. Both common plants to the coastal areas of Australia. There are cool things you can find. Now for really up close. Both of those plants are members of the family Sapindaceae, or the soapberry family. Up here is another cool one we can find. This one is looking kind of dead, but this is a Banksia integrifolia, also known as a coast Banksia. I really like the Banksia. It's a member of the Proteaceae family, and it's honestly one of my favorite types of plants you can find in Australia. They have these really cool fruits that are, or the inflorescence I should say, the fruits are actually embedded into the stem of the plant, so, or the ovary is, so when it develops to a fruit, it kind of splits open in a really weird way. Almost looks like a clamshell or bird's mouth protruding from the stem. It's really interesting looking. Of course, none of these trees get too high, but they're naturally under a lot of pressure from the intense salt spray of the ocean, literally right there. The other side has some interesting things going on floristically too, and some interesting restoration efforts going on, but it's honestly probably a better topic for another video. And like signs, here's another sign. If you can't read it, I'll just put a picture up for you. And we're getting pretty close to the end of it. Right about here. That vine on the ground is Ipomoea pes-caprae, which is also pretty common, at least the tropical old world oceans and the Pacific Islands. It might also be commonly found, I believe, in the Americas as well. Coastal plants have pretty interesting distributions that can often break the typical biogeographic barriers we're familiar with, but that's really sort of the end of the first patch of this remaining rainforest. There's actually 3 of them, and I'm going to try and show you all of them today. It's a really big, mature Banksia integrifolia, and yeah, this whole area, even though it looks quite small and shrubby, was never totally cleared, unlike all the land here and the high rises over there very clearly have been. Individual surviving trees are not that uncommon around here, but actual patches of what was once rainforest are. More interior from the ocean, there would be historically some really much taller, more well-developed and more speciose rainforests occurring, but not really going to be able to find those today, unfortunately. But you can find them elsewhere in Australia. Now on the other side of the road here, we actually find the largest patch of this remaining rainforest, which is it's like between a strip of land between the road and the sort of lake, which you can kind of see group of trees there. I'll get a better view in a second. But this one is almost entirely dominated by the Hibiscus tiliaceus. See, it's kind of, even here, further back from the beach, it's quite salt pruned. Of course, Hibiscus tiliaceus must be a very salt tolerant or salt spray tolerant tree to survive so close to the coast. But there's only so much you can handle. I mean, and even these salt tolerant trees will get pruned a little bit in the long run. Whoops. Right here we can see another common one, which was actually found in the other patch, and I neglected to show you it. It is Macaranga tanarius. Looks quite similar here. I'm going to play the brightness up quite a lot. This one grows a lot more shrub-like typically, but can grow into a tree. I'll show you in a second what the difference between them is. But just know it's also pretty common in the coastal areas. It's found more in just Southeast Asia and Eastern Australia. There are some floral connections between Southeast Asia and Australia, which I think should be a little bit obvious, but of course, Australia is so much its own thing floristically, it can be hard to forget it's connected to the rest of the world. I think it's quite tall. Hibiscus tiliaceus I'm referring to now, if he gets the chance to. Another nice Banksia integrifolia. Here, I'm gonna look for a good fruit on it now because I think they're really fascinating, as I said. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. And the fruit opens up, and the inflorescence, it almost looks like this little weird, like, bunch of bird's mouths or clam shells. It's absolutely fascinating, I think. And it's something that's so unique, it really is, I think, the Australia flora, its characteristic appearance. Really, the whole Proteaceae family is super cool and interesting looking and truly unique. So the family Proteaceae is very typical of the southern hemisphere, especially the far southern hemisphere. So southern South America, there's several species, but most of them are in Australia and South Africa, a couple in New Zealand, and some that spread further north into Southeast Asia and Africa. Right there, that palm tree, that might be Livistona australis, which if it is, I presume it's planted, but it could really be any palm, likely an introduced one as well. Yeah, I can see the lake a little better right now. It really is great that this was preserved. But I mean, I just wish it could be more of it was left alone. And there are some mangroves growing right here too. Mangroves, another classic coastal plant, though of course they grow in a different type of coastal habitat than ones in the sand dunes grow. You can tell by all those little mangrove knees. I can't remember what the right term for them is, and I honestly can't remember what the species of mangrove you find here is currently. I'm pretty sure it's a species of Avicenna, because I know Avicennas typically produce these knees as their adaptation to derive oxygen. And the Australian mangrove, I think I'm sure there's several species, but the most common one is quite widespread and found as far south as Melbourne, so almost as far south as you can get while remaining on the Australian continent and not getting to like Tasmania. I was going to introduce traveler's palm, which is a plant native to Madagascar. I suppose it could be something different, but I highly doubt it. Can't remember what the scientific name is right at the moment. I'm moving to the north side of this largest remaining rainforest patch. You can see another plant species here, which looks quite a lot like Hibiscus tiliaceus, and that is Macaranga tanarius, the shrub we have right in the foreground. So that it looks quite a lot like the Hibiscus tiliaceus. I guess it doesn't get normally as tall and typically grows as a shrub, but the biggest thing you can look at to tell them apart is where the petiole attaches, because on these plants, it attaches on the back of the leaf, so it's peltate You see all the leaf veins. I hope you can see this at least. The leaf veins all sort of converge on one point on the sort of near the top of a leaf, but definitely not at the very top, and that's because that is where the petiole attaches. On Hibiscus tiliaceus, the petiole attaches to the very top of the leaf. Important distinguishing factor between the two of them. Macaranga tanarius is a member of the family Euphorbiaceae, which can be found in pretty much every continent except Antarctica, which one might think is a biogeographic link between Australia and the rest of the world, but really it's not. It's such a big family it almost doesn't even matter, because Euphorbia has over 7,000 species and has likely been around for a very long time. So yeah. And right here we have the north segment of the narrow-neck rainforest, which apparently has a couple other species you won't find in the other segments. Of course, you got a really nice Banksia here as well, and this one's actually in bloom, which is lovely to see. Amazing genus Banksia. I think has about 150 species. Almost all of them are, in fact, I think all of them are only found in Australia. Another very coastal plant here. This is Hibbertia scandens with a nice yellow flower. Quite pretty, I think. It looks like a bit of a shrub, but it's actually more of a woody vine. And we have this plant as well. This is Acacia sophoria, the coast acacia. Now, in Australia, there's about 1,000 species of acacia, and it's actually almost entirely an Australian genus. Well, many people associate it with Africa. There's been a bit of a controversy over this, but the type species for acacia has been changed to an Australian species because it was found that acacia, which originally included the Australian species, but also the African and Asian species and some North American ones, was polyphyletic and needed to be broken up. And because Australia had the most species, they actually appealed successfully as some Australian botanists to have the type specimen change, which is usually pretty unprecedented. It caused a lot of anger among African botanists, but regardless, now it's an Australian genus, and I don't know what to make of that exactly. I don't think there's any other country in the world that has more than 1,000 members of any one's genus, so Australia's a bit unique in that regard. Of course, one of the species you can find outside of Australia is Acacia koa, which occurs in Hawaii quite commonly. I mean, only occurs in Hawaii. It's an endemic species there. More about acacia. I wish I could tell you if this was Tuckeroo or beach Alectryon. It's the underside of the leaves look like, very silvery. Important thing to know about acacia in Australia is that we're looking at aren't actually leaves, they are what's known as phyllodes, so it's basically a petiole that has been widened into like a leaf-like structure, which I'm not even sure how you tell a phylode from a leaf, but that's apparently how it works. And I know, at least on Acacia koa in Hawaii, we'll sometimes notice is you have the phylode, and then growing out from the phylode is like the regular compound leaf you'd associate with like a member of the pea family, which acacia is. This is, of course, a member of Fabaceae. Stop saying of course, many of you guys may not know this, but anyways, it's technically not a true leaf. They're quite thick and leathery, these guys, which I'm sure helps them in the harsh, desiccating environment of the ocean. Is that more of the Hibiscus tiliaceus? The little flowers right there. I'm sorry I couldn't find one that was actually flowering, but it's whatever. I think I'm weirding out a lot of people here. Just filming and talking about plants right now. The sidewalk or boardwalk, I'm not sure what the proper term for it is, on Surface Paradise is always full of people. I'm sure they notice what I'm doing here, and it's not normal, but I don't really care. I'll be gone soon anyways. Oops. I swear there was a sign that said what some of the other species you could find here is, but unfortunately I just can't find it right now. If I could, I would show it to you. I'll put a picture up, I think. Maybe it's up ahead. That's something completely different. There's a larger Macaranga tanarius. See it growing much more of a tree shape right there. I already saw that sign. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a really small area. It probably doesn't have more than it can't be more than like a couple tens of hectares, or like what, 50 acres. I don't think it's even that much. I'll try and do a calculation on Google Maps to figure out how big it is exactly, but it is absolutely tiny and preserving a very important piece of natural heritage for the Gold Coast. So yeah, see you next time.